Welcome back. You know, I never really thought that I'd be talking about NASCAR 21 Ignition again. It's a game that does not deserve a tribute or eulogy or whatever you want to call it. In fact, this game didn't even deserve existence. But I am, in some strange way, indebted to this game. The Day -1 experience that I did back in 2021 really set my channel on the path that it is on today, so for that bit of happenstance, I am grateful. And since I documented, you know, the release of the game, its existence with the 2022 update, it's only fair to cover it after its demise. My goal here today is basically cleanup. There's still several features that I never got to, the biggest one being career mode. Even games like, you know, the N64 version of NASCAR 99 have a special cutscene when you win a championship, and that whole game fit on a cartridge in under 13 megabytes. But I get the sneaking suspicion that motorsport games couldn't even be bothered to do anything special when you win a championship in career mode. But at the end of the day, there's only one way to prove that theory. Since I totally forgot that he was even in NASCAR 06 in the Wheel and Modified Tour, we're doing this career mode as Matt Martin. I decided that I would join Roush Fenway and return the Martin family name to the number 6 car. Although Ryan Newman still shows up to the track in his fire suit, I guess he's a Roush Fenway reserve driver. Here's the game settings I'm going to be using for this. No assists, difficulty of champion since I can't even really keep pace on extreme. NASCAR 21 Ignition was practically never finished, so it's best to keep the thought processes that the game has to make at a minimum. And that means 2% races, visual damage only, no tire and fuel consumption, no stage breaks, and most importantly, no rules. Here's your first obvious developer screw-up. My driver is Matt Martin in the menus. The car itself still says Ryan Newman, and the leaderboard says player driver.
The drivers are ready, the pre-race festivities have finished, and we're about ready to get racing. The Daytona 500 is about to be green.
I single car qualified in 18th for the 4-lap Daytona 500, and other than absolutely no one observing the yellow line rule, things were almost normal. I jumped up to the outside line and rode that momentum all the way up to 7th. Then I got by Christopher Bell and held off an illegal move by Kyle Busch to bring it home in 5th. Alex Bowman won the 500 in a reversal of last year's running. The Daytona road course was next, where in qualifying I hit just about everything I possibly could have and still qualified in 16th. This was a one-lap race, and so I saw that as an opportunity to just barrel through everyone and everything, culminating with the total obliteration of Dennis. I nearly ran out of talent on the front stretch chicane, but still managed to finish in 5th. And just like that, we were on to Homestead. I started in 7th, and quite frankly, I was just a little bit off on pace. I ended up pinning the thing up by the wall, hoping I could carry some more momentum up there, and use the draft as much as I could to slow down the bleeding, and finished in 15th. A boring race, but at least nothing in the game broke. But I wasn't quite so lucky in Las Vegas. If you skip through the menus too fast in practice, you can actually softlock the entire game. It even spawned my car on the backstretch in a state of suspended animation. Anyways, once I got the game back on, I qualified full throttle because, you know, it's a 550 race, and started down in 31st. But at the very least, I was the only car in the race that could stay wide open, so I jumped up to the top and sailed past just about everybody. Got up to 3rd spot with 1 lap to go, battling side by side with Brad Keselowski, while still trying to reel in William Byron. Headed down to turn 3, I just kept the throttle down, managed to clear Brad as I swept down to the bottom, and just barely got to Byron's left rear to pull him back just a little bit, and cleared him to the line to get my first win of the season. Next up was Phoenix, where I felt like I was completely lost, but still somehow won the pole. And I was 100% screwed out of that pole when the computer controlling the car decided to brake check right before giving me control. And then I went and proved that I didn't deserve the pole anyways by almost wrecking twice in the first 2 corners, and then just destroying Austin Dillon and most of the field along with him. I tried helping Austin back onto his wheels, but all that did was get him stuck upside down. Since I had the cautions off, and the AI cars are completely inept, everyone in the field stopped for Austin's flipped car. I came around next time by and took the lead. All I had to do was just ride around for a few more laps and was granted the ultimate gift of 2 wins in a row. I mean, just take a listen to the crowd when I won. You know, since I was locked into the playoffs, I decided to just screw around for the next 21 races, as if that wasn't what I was doing already. I qualified 27th at Atlanta, old Atlanta, mind you, although it pretty much looks and drives like new Atlanta, and I used the same strategy here as I did in Las Vegas. Wide open, up top. I nearly threw it all away on the last lap, racing with Chase Elliott, but somehow did not overcorrect like Phoenix this time, and brought it home in 5th once again. Then we went to Bristol for the dirt race, and I really couldn't be bothered to figure out how to dirt race properly in this game at the time, so I just rode the wall from the pole all the way to the win. I suppose I might get the Hail Melon banned early. Next race was at Martinsville, where I came fully prepared for a disaster, and I was right to do so. First of all, I gotta talk about this. What is going on with the driver models? Sometimes they look lobotomized, sometimes they look traumatized, and above all else, they're balding and missing eyelids. I qualified 29th for the race and fumbled around for 2 corners before flat out wrecking with Kyle Larson. I thought to myself, you know what? It's a really good time to just take in the view. So I sat perpendiculous in the middle of the track, for only about 5 minutes. Now, there were a few drivers who tried to disrupt my relaxation, but I managed to keep them in check. And they eventually got fed up with it and left the track, which allowed me to complete the remaining laps in peace. With my 4th win on the season and a lead of 50 points above Dennis, we headed to his home track in Richmond. My car was flat out undrivably loose in practice, and so I went on to ride the wall in qualifying to see what type of lap that would put up. And it was just barely enough for the pole, just 31 1/1000ths was the margin. On the start, I wasn't a big fan of Chase Elliott seemingly jumping the star of the race, so I let him know about it in turn 1, and then I completely ran out of talent off of turn 2, but I did not spin thanks to somebody putting a wall to the outside of me. And so at this point I thought to myself that the only way I'm going to be able to not finish last is going to be to use that wall crutch again. And because of this game's genius physics model, that decision gave me race-winning pace. I caught up to race leader Joey Logano on the final lap and meloned right around him to get another win. Then we were off to Talladega, a track where riding the wall can't do anything for you. I started down in 32nd, but fortunately I had a car that raced pretty well in the draft, and I made it all the way up to 9th before running out of laps. It was time to head to Kansas for the Bushy McBush race. Well, I kept it full throttle and up by the wall for 5 laps and brought it home in 10th. I surprised even myself at Darlington by qualifying 7th on genuine pace. And you know, the best way I could describe the interaction between the player car and the AI cars is that your car is a feather, and their cars are made of reinforced concrete. At the start of lap 3, I got into my teammate Chris Buescher, and the contact made literally no difference on his line. Meanwhile, it broke my car into a 4-wheel drift exactly when I was crossing the banking between the track and the apron, so it just fully de-wedged and I spun the thing in front of the whole field. I guess this game does teach you to become a better driver, because there's massive consequences if you make contact with anyone. But it was in that moment that I decided to take a long, hard look at the beautiful throwback paint schemes in this field. Why can I do this? They were working on this for what, 4 years? 4 entire years? And this is what they came up with? That is nothing short of stupendous. Also, in the background of the win celebration, I saw some very distinguished Josh Blicky fans. You love to see it. Then we went to Dover, where for some reason the car was actually pretty neutral. I qualified in 11th spot and had a car capable of a whole lot more if I wasn't driving it. I tried going to the bottom of 3 off turn 2, but made just enough contact with Tyler Reddick to go and pound the inside wall as hard as possible. This time, though, instead of just stopping in front of the field, I tried going backwards to see if I could create a track blocking crash. I managed to perfectly spin my way into Harvick and Byron at the same time, and that move did the job. Then I went and barreled into the entire field at full speed, and in doing so, took the lead. Oh, and by the way, Christopher Bell became a ghost for some unknown reason, and in a few laps, the log jam had dissipated, allowing me to squeeze in yet another undeserved win. The next race was the inaugural running of the NASCAR Cup Series at COTA, and I have to admit, I was actually having fun lapping this place in qualifying. I won the pole, and we had on our hands another 1-lap endurance race. Believe it or not, I dominated, scoring yet another extremely unpopular win. At least it was achievement-worthy. Then we headed to Charlotte for the longest race of the season, the Coca-Cola 600, which in this playthrough was a full 8 laps, a true marathon. You know the deal with 550 package mile-and-a-half races. You gotta stay full throttle up by the wall. And I made some pretty solid progress doing that, getting all the way up into the top 10, and then barely beating Ross Chastain for an 8th place finish. Then we returned to road course racing at Sonoma, where I went and did this in practice. I started the race down in 34th, but fortunately the whole field almost stopped in the first 2 corners, and I managed to pass about 14 of them right there. Christopher Bell stopped being a ghost, and his presence saved me from spinning, and coming into turn 7, I forgot where to start braking, and I just blasted straight through Suarez, but somehow, some way, I came out of that 2 spots ahead of where I started. I did the same thing into turn 11 and profited 4 spots that time. Then I went and got myself into a final lap battle with Brad Keselowski and ended up spinning him across the line while I took home a 9th place finish. And so it was time to head to Nashville. I qualified 26th for the race, but I was pretty far off pace and wrecked with BJ McLeod while racing for the illustrious 34th position. There is an achievement for winning at Nashville, however, so to secure that, I just start and parked in front of the field. But I'll promise you, this is the last time in this career mode that I did that stupid method to win a race. The real problem with this game is I found myself having a lot more fun doing this than I did playing the game correctly. Then we headed to Pocono for the doubleheader weekend. I rolled off 22nd for the first race, and shockingly, the bottom line was the way to go. Unheard of for a 550 race. On the last lap headed down to turn 1, I'm fairly confident that Brad Keselowski tried getting me back for Sonoma, but he missed, and in the end, I battled Daniel Suarez to the line for 10th spot. Since there's no qualifying for the second race, the game started me from 11th, and this time I meant business. Made a huge move on the first lap into the tunnel turn apron, which is completely smooth in this game for some reason, and I got up to 4th by the end of the first lap. I made the same tunnel turn move again to get into position for an all-out battle between me and Matt DiBenedetto. I got side by side with him into turn 1 on the final lap, and we banged down the long pond straightaway. I tried to dive into turn 2 and clear him, but just couldn't quite do it. But then I sent it down to turn 3 and finally made the move. Freddie's mind got stuck again, by the way.
All clear, all clear, all clear.
And I picked up my 10th win on the season, the first legitimate one in quite a while. Road America was next, the longest track on the schedule. I qualified 4th for the race, and Larson got himself a great jump on the start, so I thought to myself, alright, this looks pretty inviting. I'll try to follow him through. Problem is, he had a very different idea of where the braking zone starts, so I just plowed right through him. I sped up, though, to make sure that I missed his spinning car when he would rejoin with the track after sliding in the grass, and he stopped right up in front of the whole field and forced everyone to check up. Except for me, of course. So, I rode around for the rest of the lap and won by over 4 seconds. And then we went back to Atlanta. Same deal as every 550-mile-and-a-half race. Started 30th, went to the top, pulled off a major save thanks to the wall, and then wrecked myself across the line in 11th place. New Hampshire was next, and believe it or not, my car actually felt comfortable. It qualified pretty well, too. I secured myself a 12th place start. Bubba Wallace almost got turned around on the exit of turn 2 on the first lap, and on the next lap, his future teammate Tyler Reddick either got dumped or spun out on his own from second. So instead of T-boning him, I decided to take a full impact to the outside wall, and then Joey Gase, for reasons I still don't quite understand, was stopped on the backstretch, so I had to thread the needle between him and Christopher Bell, and found myself in 4th. From there, the race actually calmed down and became somewhat normal. I slowly drifted back to 7th before eventually running out of laps. It was back to road racing at Watkins Glen, where I Jimmy Johnson my way out of practice. And I went on to lose my mind in multi-car qualifying thanks to other cars impeding my runs. In the final round, I just rammed Chase Elliott because screw it. Fortunately, though, my best lap was good enough to start 3rd. In the race, I used Chase Elliott for brakes into turn 1, and then just drove away from the field. There was literally nothing to it. The race win camera broke, and I won by over 6 seconds in a 2-lap race. We had some more road racing to do, this time at Indianapolis. My qualifying run was somehow good enough for pole by an entire second above Kyle Larson. The start was just about a repeat of Road America. Kyle Larson got a better start than me, braked a lot sooner than me, and got rammed. This time, though, he hung on and found a way to retaliate while only being on 2 wheels. I got him back, though, in turn 7, outbraked him, and took the spot cleanly. On the final lap, Kyle Larson had one more shot at me into turn 1, but he just didn't quite get there, and that allowed me to drive off to a 1.5-second lead and bring home the win. We returned to oval racing in Michigan, and in practice, I tried hitting the victory lane bushes, but they got rid of those a long time ago, so I ended up doing this instead.
Got ourselves some data. Nice practice.
qualifying felt like I was at a super speedway. I was literally full throttle on the bottom for 100% of the lap, and still I qualified dead last. I guess all that downforce I had in it paid off in the race though, as I was able to stay wide open for almost the entire duration of the race and sail right by most of the field. I managed to beat Alex Bowman to the line for 11th spot, and with that, I've already won the regular season championship coming into Daytona. I qualified 16th for the race and took advantage of the very, very top of the racetrack to get by some random checkups that the AI cars did. I was literally hitting the wall at times, trying to get so far up the track to miss him, and right as I took the white flag, I realized I might have a shot at winning this. On the backstretch, it was down to just me and William Byron. I had a huge run on him, pulled down low into turn 3, and just totally stalled out thanks to the side draft. For some reason, the entire pack flat out evaporated. It was a man-to-man battle to the flag. We were beating and banging off each other, and at the line, I got him by 3/1000ths of a second. I can't think of a cooler way to end the regular season. Here's a quick look at the playoff grid entering the Southern 500 at Darlington, the first race of the round of 16. And there I actually qualified second for the race behind Brad Keselowski. At this point, I was actually starting to, get used to this game's driving model. I could really make some speed through turns 1 and 2, but here's what the problem was. Brad Keselowski was way too good at covering the bottom line, so I had to get smart with him. I think this is the one and only time I actually demonstrated genuine racecraft in this entire career mode. I jumped to the outside of him through turns 1 and 2 and still couldn't quite get him cleared down the back, which allowed me to enter turn 3 up on the top side and gently slide down underneath the 2 cars we exited turn 4. Then I went and sailed that thing down to turn 1 and made the pass for the lead. I held it all the way to the checkered flag, and that win locked me into the round of 12, meaning that I do not have to worry about Richmond or Bristol, which I would have had a 0% chance of winning at anyways without exploiting glitches. At Richmond, I qualified in 26th position, but fortunately the AI cars check up on the front stretch for no reason, which actually made me kind of competitive. I slowly but surely made my way up to 11th spot before the drop of the checkered flag. The next race was Bristol, where I suck and the AI are just broken. I qualified dead last with a lap time of 15.9. Meanwhile, Brad Keselowski won the pole with a 14.4. Somebody please inspect that car. I did have a super dumb idea though about how to combat that speed. Try to ride the wall, but only some of the time. You really got to make sure to nail it in the center of the corner, but if you ride the wall all the way to the straightaway, you lose your momentum. So if you can hit it just right, you can keep building these runs on corner exit and actually make passes, because the physics in this game is completely stupid. I managed to cheese 10th with this strategy, and to be honest, that was good enough for me. The first race of the round of 12 was Las Vegas, and going off the spring race, I knew pretty well that this race was going to be my path to the round of 8. I might have qualified down in 29th, but that just didn't matter. I stayed full throttle, and in 3 laps, I had the lead. Simply put, it was just no contest. Hey, well, there's a nice bonus. And then it was time for the final super speedway race of the year at Talladega. No real strategy on this one. I started down in 36th and definitely would have lost the draft if it wasn't for everybody in the back forming a single file line that I could draft off of. I took a cue from the AI cars at Daytona and totally ignored the yellow line rule to make some quick moves, and after a 4-wide moment, a near disaster, and some additional rules violations, I found myself racing for 13th with Eric Almirola. Since tandem drafting with him helped me hold off everybody else, I didn't even try passing him, and so I settled for a 14th place finish. And then we headed to the Charlotte Roval for the cutoff race. Qualifying surprised me, but not in a good way. I thought I put down a pretty solid lap. I didn't even really have much wheel spin at all on corner exits, but it was only good enough for 28th. The AI cars were very courteous with their braking zones, going really, really weak in almost every corner, which gave me some spots that were almost free. But then, disaster struck for Ryan Blaney's playoff hopes. He tried a super weird shallow entry into turn 7, clipped a curb wrong, and flipped himself out of a chance at the championship. Meanwhile, at his expense, I found myself in 18th spot. On the final lap, I pulled a crossover move on my teammate Chris Buescher to take 17th, and just to add to the spectacle, I spun the thing across the line while battling with Kevin Harvick. Kyle Busch was eliminated from the playoffs with 4 wins on the season. That's the second most of any driver. Quite a format we got going on here. Texas was next, and you know the deal with the mile-and-a-half races in this game. I went to the top side and blew by a large percentage of the field. I almost wrecked it, trying 4 wide up on the outside of Kyle Larson, but fortunately that settled down pretty quick. On the final lap, I pulled off a half pass in the grass on William Byron and sent the thing real deep into turn 1 to try to grab as many spots as I could. Made a little bit of contact with Alex Bowman and pulled back into line to take home a 6th place finish. Kyle Busch, 1 week after elimination, struck back to win the race. I still had a full race worth of points over the cutoff line and really didn't need to win my way in, but I wanted to anyways. I didn't have the raw pace needed to go up there and win at Kansas, but I do know how to wreck. In fact, I think I know how to wreck quite well. So, I started the race from 28th spot, and instead of jumping to the top side, this time I went down to the bottom, and it was for good reason. Now, personally, I don't recommend this for every Championship 4 run, of course, but my strategy here was to attempt an overcorrect style crash. So, on lap 2, in turns 1 and 2, I went up and made contact with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., got the thing crossed up on the apron, and shot right as hard as I possibly could. And I managed to shove my car up and underneath Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s and got just lucky enough to clip Josh Blicky on my way back down the track. In doing so, I unleashed the clog. Ty Dillon expressed his displeasure with the move, but quite frankly, it was too late. The damage had been done, and the clog absorbed the entire field's mind, allowing me to slip by down on the apron. And within 2 laps, I had the lead. Thanks to those mind games, I secured my 17th win on the season, and a very illegitimate Championship 4 spot, but then again, this is playoffs, what do you expect? The next race was the penultimate round of the season, Martinsville, and this was the first time that I decided to actually try a setup other than stable, and went all the way to the tight side since I was wrecking loose in the spring race here. It genuinely was a huge improvement, and I qualified the thing in 23rd spot. I was even better than that in the race though. I more or less pinned the thing down next to the curb, which is what you should do here, and with a little bit of contact, made my way up through the top 15. Eventually, I muscled my way around my teammate Chris Buescher and brought it home in 12th spot. So now, Phoenix is going to come down to a battle between me, Dennis Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and William Byron. Oh, and by the way, Byron has 0 wins on the season. Quite a format we got going on here. At Phoenix, I decided to keep the max tight adjustment, and that actually fixed all of my handling problems there too. I guess I gave the game way too much faith, thinking that stable would actually be, stable. In qualifying, I actually put it on pole by a 10th above Kyle Larson. Championship 4 contenders Hamlin, Truex, and Byron rolled off in 3rd, 5th, and 9th respectively. Taking the green flag, the computer made sure to check up and screw me out of the pole spot. Larson got the opportunity to shoot away with the lead, and I got to battling with practically everyone, and fell down to 5th spot at the end of the first lap, with Hamlin and Truex right on my back bumper. I jumped up to the top again to see if I could find anything up there, and really didn't. And off of turn 4, I realized that the top of 4 is not the way I want to do this. So I threw it straight to the bottom, cutting the dog leg, and got clear of Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell. But on the next lap, I accidentally rammed Logano into turn 1, and I nearly threw away my entire season, but I managed to just barely catch it and drive out of the slide down the apron. Somehow, I didn't lose a single spot in doing that. Through all the madness, William Byron actually managed to take 2nd in the points standings, so it was up to just me now to prevent a winless champion. Things settled down just a little bit from there, and I started gaining on Logano again by running the top side and actually, paying attention to my line. And in the end, Kyle Larson unsurprisingly won the race, but Matt Martin, by finishing in 3rd spot, is the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series champion. William Byron comes up 2nd. Why is it that me and the 24 car are just totally inseparable? Doesn't even matter who's driving it. And since I didn't win the race, it makes sense I can't celebrate the race win, but there's gotta be something. Maybe a screen that says, "Congratulations, you spent $90 on this. Thanks for your investment." Really? Is that really everything? Go to next event? So we're not even gonna acknowledge it. Am I surprised? Absolutely not. Although, I don't feel nearly as guilty about all that race manipulation I did now. As you can tell, I used my leverage as the defending champion to negotiate a contract with a new team. I signed with Team Penske to replace Brad Keselowski in the 2-car, and because of contracts in the sort, that meant that Ryan Newman came out of retirement, and Brad Keselowski, I guess, just has no job. In other news, Kevin Harvick retired and got himself replaced by Riley Herbst. Keeping with tradition, since I didn't win the Daytona 500 in my first go-around here, I decided to make it the last race of the career mode. I qualified 16th in my first outing with Team Penske and quickly discovered the benefits of fast teammates. On the start, I cut into line behind Ryan Blaney and right in front of Joey Logano and used their combined draft for a huge lunge up to the outside coming into turn 3. And I managed to actually ride that momentum all the way up to 6th spot. I just about wrecked getting past Daniel Suarez, and then out of necessity, I started tandeming with Austin Dillon in an effort to catch the top 3 cars who got single file and left all of us idiots behind. I gotta tell you, Austin's car was insanely fast. We got up to 202 miles an hour down the backstretch just by ourselves. We got caught back up right as we took the white flag. So I abandoned Austin and made the move to the top side one more time and rode that speed all the way past Byron and cleared him in turns 1 and 2. And I put Team Penske's number 2 Ford in victory lane in the 2022 Daytona 500. It wasn't Austin Cindric this time, but hey, at least it kind of made sense. Not many things in this playthrough did. Well, I guess that's career mode. I feel pretty much numb after having done that, but at the very least I got to see this game technically at its best, with all the settings turned off so it can't get too confused. There is one more thing I'd like to do, though. There's an achievement called Going the Distance. All you have to do is finish a 100% length Coca-Cola 600. And because this sounds like a terrible way for me to waste my time, I decided to try it. Here's the settings I'll be using. Complex damage, tire wear and fuel consumption is back on. There will be rules and stages. And just as a bonus, I'll be starting dead last. I'm still keeping the difficulty at champion though, because otherwise it would be a 4-hour battle for last. I'm gonna run this race as Chris Buescher. And if you remember, this is the 2022 Coca-Cola 600, the one that he flipped his way out of. Now, when it comes to pulling this off, I actually had a couple of strategies. The first one was the cheese strategy. In this attempt, I pulled off track right as we took the green flag, went backwards, and immediately got myself disqualified. And you know what? Doing this actually doesn't give you the achievement. I'll give Motorsport Games a little bit of credit here. It's good to see that there are certain, rather debatable quality standards being upheld. Since that didn't work, the next strategy was to finish. Just finish. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how, I just need to get to my destination with the car still running. The start of the race was decently calm. By using the top side, I went from last to 21st in just 11 laps. But the random checkups into turn 1 were absolutely terrible. I plowed straight into Martin Truex Jr. and at least visually destroyed my front end. Once I had a few laps on the tires, I realized that checkups were not going to be the worst problem in this race. I made an extremely crucial setup mistake. I used the stable setup again, and it was just undrivable once the tires started wearing. It got so bad that I'm pretty sure I set the record for most self-spins in one race. As you can imagine, wrecking that much really does a number on your race car. I could only hit a max of about 174 miles an hour after all that. In the final few laps, I went up to the outside of teammates Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch through turns 1 and 2. Kyle came up off the corner like he had the entire racetrack to himself, which caused me to spin one final time, forcing the race to end under caution. I closed out a god-awful 31st place finish, a full 8 laps behind race winner Kevin Harvick. Because I actually finished, I got the participation trophy that I was seeking. But you know me, I'm not going to be satisfied unless I find a way to win. Alright, here's a strategy. Make sure the car is tight. And I guess beyond that, just don't hit as much stuff. You know, I found yet another way to screw with the AI. If you make a pass on somebody and want to spread the pack out just a little bit to make things easier, just slow down a little, and everybody behind you follows suit. I suppose doing that affects the same part of the AI's brain that starting parking does, just in a much less severe way. In the first attempt, I had to run the top side out of necessity, because the car was just undrivably loose, but here with the tight setup, I could run the car pretty much anywhere I wanted. On lap 20, there was another massive checkup, but I had enough experience with them at this point to actually miss it. Although, I didn't miss all of them. A few laps later, I got into the back of Joey Logano and saved it. Once I was done having flashbacks to Phoenix, I made the move on Ross Chastain to break up into the top 20. Now keep in mind, we're halfway through this stint, and I'm not fighting loose at all. I kept on making careful and consistent progress through this really annoying pack racing thing we were doing, and I eventually found that both Rick Ware cars were in the top 15. Once I got by those guys, I finally had a little bit of clear track to work with. I eventually caught up to a 4-car pack, made my way around Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, and Josh Bilicki pretty easily, but Kevin Harvick was a different story. I had to chase him down, actually passed him, then went and screwed up in turn 3, and had to get him back again. After a couple laps, I started gapping him, and set my sights on getting up into the top 5. I caught up to Eric Jones and Harrison Burton right as the pit window opened, so I thought I'd be a little bit clever and short pit to get around them through strategy instead of doing it on the racetrack. But as I was making my entry to pit road, I got on the brakes just a little bit too hard and spun it into the pits. Fortunately, getting on fresh tires first more than made up for the time loss. Once everybody was done cycling through, I was actually running in 4th. And thanks to lap traffic, I eventually got by Chase Elliott and Chase Briscoe to close out the first stage in 2nd. And so, I pitted for 4 tires and fuel, got myself a not-so-good restart, and fell to 4th by turn 2. I waited for the field to spread out just a little bit, and then just went for it. Got by Kevin Harvick and Alex Bowman on the same lap, slipped through most of the lap traffic, and caught up to race leader Chase Briscoe. There was still the lap car of Daniel Suarez separating us, so on lap 108, I jumped up to the outside exiting turn 2, rolled that momentum up to Chase Briscoe's back bumper, got to his right rear through 3 and 4, and drag raced him to the line to take the top spot. And with that, I finally had what I wanted. Clean air and fresh tires. I had almost the entire stint to myself, only catching up to the back markers on lap 144. When it came time to pit, I actually did it without spinning. Also unrelated, when the track lights come on, it feels like the entire game tries to self-destruct. Later on, I was going along just fine, and randomly, we had a caution. I decided to pit and cycled out in 2nd on the lead lap, but I was at the tail end of the line. I pulled off a ridiculous save after plowing into Garrett Smithley, and then got to work on the lap traffic. I was making pretty solid progress and eventually got to battling 3 wide with Kyle Larson and Eric Almirola. Larson went and fenced the 10 car, and I bounced off him through the quad oval, which sent me into the spin cycle. I stayed out under the caution, and that put me ahead of all the lap cars that I was racing with. So I went and took the lead back from Chase Briscoe into turn 3, drove off into a different zip code, and easily took the stage win. I pitted under yellow and restarted with the lead, but with a massive glob of lap traffic up in front of me. By the way, something happened to Daniel Suarez on the restart. He just couldn't get going at all and backed up the entire inside line. I was lucky enough to jump to the outside and avoid most of the madness. For some reason, there was a bunch of cars making pit stops like 2 laps into the stage, and I nearly wrecked when the field checked up for them. Things smoothed out a little bit once I got by all those lap cars, and then we had another phantom caution. I pitted again and restarted 2nd. I have to admit, I was having quite a bit of fun flying by all those lap cars. There were some moments that were a little too close for comfort. I even used lessons learned from Kyle Busch to make moves at full speed down on the apron. In just a few more laps, I managed to reel in Chase Briscoe and took the lead back off of turn 4. About 10 laps later, though, I got a little bit overconfident, sending it up the inside of Tyler Reddick, and spun myself out through 3 and 4. I pitted again, and cycled out in 2nd again. Shortly after the restart, the field checked up so badly into turn 1 that I thought they were going to wreck. So I threw the thing in there on the apron, but since they somehow didn't wreck, I was hoping that Joey Logano would let me back onto the racetrack. But, you know, this is Logano we're dealing with. So I got myself right-reared into the fence, collecting Logano, Blaney, and Justin Haley. Obviously, under that caution, I had to pit, and took the time to repair the damage to the car. Once we got back onto green, Josh Bilicki also had some massive problem, and I had to use the apron again to miss the checkup. Now, don't ask me how, but the damage that I had made literally zero impact on my car's performance. I guess I have to thank Justin Haley. He kind of absorbed some of the blow before my front end hit the wall. On lap 248, race leader Chase Briscoe hit pit road, which caused another checkup that I nearly wrecked in. At least I took the lead because of that. I then rode around for the next 14 laps before making a green flag pit stop. Once everything cycled through, I assumed the lead again, carefully navigated my way through the endless lap traffic, and picked up the Stage 3 win. After pitting under the caution, I started the final stage with the lead, and as usual, behind a bunch of lap cars. I managed to get through them all cleanly, and by lap 312, I had some clear track to work with. I even ran down and lapped the second place runner Chase Briscoe. It was the second time around with the lap cars that I actually got myself in trouble. We were going along fine, somebody decided to pit, and the entire field just stops right in my lap. I plowed into Harrison Burton, spun it around, and brought out the caution. I, of course, used this as an opportunity to put on tires, and because I lapped the entire field, I was able to pit without even losing the lead. I eventually got by enough lap cars to have a little bit of clear track and actually got to lap Chase Briscoe again. On lap 365, I made my final pit stop, 4 tires and fuel like literally every other stop I made in this race, and with that, we were down and away. Obviously, I still had the lead, and using those fresh tires to my advantage, I went flying around as many lap cars as I possibly could. I eventually put another lap on Chase Briscoe and just kept running away with the lead. On the 392nd lap of the race, I almost spun out, running underneath Christopher Bell into turn 1, and just barely saved it down on the apron. Unlike Logano, William Byron was actually gentlemanly about it and let me get back up onto the racetrack. It took me a few laps to work through all that traffic, but I eventually did, and that left me once again running on an absolutely beautiful, empty racetrack. On the final lap, I saw Chase Briscoe coming off of pit road, and I decided I'm gonna keep him an extra lap down. So I held him off through turns 3 and 4, and on the front straightaway, I spun myself across the line to win the Coca-Cola 600. Kevin Harvick brought it home in second, 4 laps behind me. Briscoe finished third, and I guess it didn't count that extra lap I put on him for some reason. I don't know. And honestly, I really don't care. But you know what I do care about? I am done with this game! At least for now I am. I mean, there is mods and stuff, so you never really know. But when it comes to the base game, I think I've seen about all I can stomach. Well, I guess that does it for the post-license experience. This game's story is over. Man, that feels good to say. And with that, I'd like to take a moment and thank each and every one of my channel supporters. Your support really does a lot to keep the show going, and I can't thank you enough. You know, I thought this video was going to be a simple one to make, and, well, I ended up recording about 22 hours of footage, so I think you can imagine things got a little complicated. But regardless of all that, I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this one. Also, let me know down in the comments below some things that you'd like to see next, and as always, I'll see you next time.